Hey, greetings. I'm back. 13 Advantages and Disadvantages of Utilitarianism Theory. Okay, it's by Brandon Miller, March 3rd, 2019. It's the disadvantages of it. You can find this at Green Garage blog, and that's what he talks about. Utilitarianism is a doctrine which suggests actions are correct if they are useful or to benefit the majority of the population, determining the morality or ethics of every decision relies upon the result outcome instead of any factor involved. That means what it means, the definition of the ends. Justifying the means in any situation. There are three fundamental principles that utilitarianism follows to create an ethical structure for society. Actions are only right if the consequences of them maximize whatever is good or anything that is bad. The only thing that is good in society is happiness. Actions are only correct if they can maximize pleasure for the majority of everyone. When we look at the definition of utilitarianism, there are some assumptions that must be made. We must believe that happiness is good for an individual in the first place. There must be a desire within society to pursue what would be considered something that creates that reaction. By doing so, the idea is that the suffering could be reduced because we are all working together to create a world that is mutual happy. And here we go. These are critical utilitarian pros and cons to review. We're looking at the definition of this theory. Here's the list of utilitarianism. Here's the list of the pros of utilitarianism. Okay. Number one, we get to focus on happiness as a society. The reason why utilitarianism is a popular theory is due to the fact that it puts happiness as the central reason for our existence. When we look at societies around the world today, it is clear that people are not experiencing this emotion. People tend to feel happier when they have access to moral financial resources. They also tend to experience this more often when there are fewer worries about the future of employment. In a world where utilitarianism is the primary emphasis of each action, we could reduce unemployment rates and improve household incomes because we would be looking at the effects instead of the process for the results. Yep, it's a popular one. And here's number two. It teaches us that harming other people. Hold on a second. Mishaps. Okay, let's back from the top again. It teaches us harming other people is wrong, but anyone can define a personal moral definition, then argue it for within the rest of their community. What utilitarianism teaches is that our definition of morality and ethics comes from a common base perspective instead of an individual outlook. There may be choices that makes us happy as an individual. It shows us that harming others for the sake of our benefit is not a helpful approach. Utilitarianism, number three, utilitarianism is an easy theory to implement. So it's not a helpful approach. Yeah, that's what they're trying to tell you about it. This is the pros of it. Utilitarianism is an easy theory to implement. There's only one process focused on when implementing a society that functions from the foundations of utilitarianism. Happiness, all we need to do is to make this theory work together in a majority of group and then work to determine what the positive or negative effects of each choices would be. This decision-making process is something that we all do from our first days of childhood. Incorporating it to a group of theory is naturally a natural step forward. Yep, that's the third part, how you implement it. And number four is a secular system that focuses on humanity. One of the most significant struggles of humanity faces when looking at life from a societal perspective is our vision of spirituality. According to various estimates, that there are roughly 4,200 different religions being practiced in our world right now, trying to pin down what someone considers a spiritual belief and what another person would think about think to be a scientific fact can be challenging. When we place the focus each moral decision based on happiness alone, then we eliminate the inconsistencies within the curve. Excuse me. When focusing on the supernatural deity from an individual's perspective. Yeah, that's number four. The secular talks about that. And number five, utilitarianism seeks to create the highest good. Although in a perfect world we would want to see everyone would have an equal happiness and opportunities, there is enough of a difference within our various subgroups that can make this impossible to achieve. That's why utilitarianism focuses on the majority as a group for happiness instead for everyone. When we are pursuing the ideas that bring the maximum level of joy into our lives, then we are limiting the potential for harmony to occur in our families and communities and overall culture. Yep, that's why utilitarianism is very difficult. It's an extreme side. It does talk about the deontology of it. I got a list of here, and I will break these down in a minute. And the consequentialism in it, and consequences of any action, yeah, right or wrong, yes, it's constructive. And consequentialism, such as egoism and altruism, utilitarianism considers the interests of all humans equally. That's like I've written down. Yeah, this is about utilitarianism, 13 advantages and disadvantages of a system like this, because I've seen this on a video of, I think, the BGS Igmore when he mentioned the black pill, the two ideologies of the utilitarian, the nihilist and the utilitarian philosophies. They are extreme sides. So this is a series that I want. I make another series on it in the future, in the spring or something. But here we go. Utilitarian seeks to create the highest good. Although in a perfect world we would want to see everyone have an equal happiness and opportunities, there is enough of a difference within our various subgroups that can make this impossible to achieve. That's why utilitarianism focuses on the majority as a group for happiness instead for everyone. When we are pursuing ideas that bring in a maximum level of joy into our lives, then we are limiting the potential for harm to occur in our families, communities, and overall culture. Yep, it's an extreme side. It's construct life, what you want in happiness, and it's very constructive. It's to build. Everybody can do that. That's why this philosophy, if you say it's black pilled, it's very difficult for people to do. And let's read number six. It focuses on the democratic process for the forward movement. In a typical democracy, the passages of legislation or the election of the representative occurs when there is 50% plus one. Vote the majority. We use this structure because it is seen as being the fairest solution to balance the different interests that everyone has for their lives. All modern governance structures, which features democratic principles, uses this philosophy. That means we're already using principles of this theory to create happiness in our lives. Now we just need to take the next step forward to apply it outside of government. That's very hard to do. Okay, number seven, we focus on the objectivity, universal solutions. The reason why utilitarianism offers such as a promise as a societal approach is because it incorporates universal ethics in objective manner. We can accurately measure the positive and negative consequences of each actions we decide to take a group of the process. Okay, let's see here. That's kind of hurting a little bit. Hold on. Okay. Process. Forgot where I was at. The reason why utilitarianism, okay, the objective manner, consequence of which action we decide to take on the group, it process which allows us to create an independent way of determining what is wrong, what is right and wrong from a moral or ethical perspective. These principles apply across the board in all human societies. Yeah, That's 7 pros of utilitarianism. There's 7 pros I just read of utilitarianism. It has its positives and negatives, okay? The pros of utilitarianism. It has its negatives. But this is the pros I just read, okay? Here's the cons, right? Let's see. Okay. All right. Here's the cons. We do not consider any other element besides happiness. Utilitarianism only focuses on the majority of happiness as a way to determine ethics and morality. Essentially, that we remember that our other forms of value to consider, we're looking at the overall experience of what it means to be human. Love is something which offers the tremendous value, but it also can cause extraordinary heartbreak. We eat foods like kale because we know that it is a healthier choice to eating Twinkies every day. Even we prefer to do the latter because it makes us feel better. There are decisions that we make every day that look at a long term perspective rather than how we feel in the moment. Utilitarianism has some benefits, but it also ignores a lot of our life experiences. That's why it's an extreme side. I have to be careful with this ideology. I did some mild research on it, still learning about it, but utilitarianism, it's got a few 7 pros to it, but the cons, a society most people ain't ready for. It is an extreme side. Yes, it's very difficult to practice because you got a lot of people thinking it's a good way to do it. It's an extreme ideology. I recommend people doing the research on deontology and Kantology, versus utilitarianism. There's probably videos like that on YouTube. So this one, I'm just making a reference. There's the pros and cons to utilitarianism. Okay, it creates an unrealistic perspective for society. That's number 2. Imagine the scenario: there are 8 people right now who would benefit from having your organs. We're looking at principles of utilitarianism. The balance of happiness of over harm supports the idea of putting you to death. Improve the satisfaction of everyone else. Why? Because you are not in that majority. If there are 8 other people and you make 9, the chances are that everyone else will vote to save themselves as a group at the expense of your life. That is why the ends can never justify the means. It makes it too easy for the majority of people in society to create harm using balancing principles. The happiness of the minority must also come into consideration. Exactly. This is why you can't have a society like that. There will always be an elite class for this to happen. This is one of the cons of it. This is number 2. Number 3, we're going to read. Utilitarianism can be unpredictable. It's very unpredictable. I believe that. It's predictable in some ways, but it's very unpredictable. I like what he said. When the last time you were able to predict the future accurately? There are times when we can take an educated guess at what is going to happen, but it's very rare to receive a premonition about the future event that actually comes true. That means it is incorrect to base ethical choices about what may or may not happen tomorrow. We must focus on what happens now in this moment to determine what path we can pursue to create and improve a society. If we are only looking at potential, then there is a possibility that we could achieve nothing. Also relies on people making a consistent decisions. But if there's one thing that humans are good at doing, it is changing their mind. And this is number 4 I'm reading. I just read that utilitarians can be unpredictable, and it also relies on people making consistent decisions. If there's one thing that humans are good at doing, it is changing their mind. You cannot trust anyone to ask the greater good if the majority decides to get rid of all the other structures which support societal health and wellness. The average person will act selfishly whenever they are faced with difficult decisions, no matter what their upbringing or spirituality happens to be. Why do people follow religions in the first place? The goal of being saved isn't initially to help anyone else find some level of the internal salvation. It is to create life insurance policies for the unpredictable future because that is what offers the comfort to the soul. This process would have happened immediately if society shifted to utilitarianism, which it won't happen because you got religions, you got secret society religions like Freemasonry and all that. It deters what we believe. To have this society, it's very black pill. I give him that. But it has a lot of cons. It is an extreme size to nihilism. I may do a video on that. Don't count on me making it, but this is a response to the ideology of black pill and the utilitarianism side of it. There's some pros and cons to it. So again, this is showing what it is. You can find this website, greengarageblog.org, and it says the 13 advantages and disadvantages of utilitarianism theory. Okay. Number 5. Number 5. Utilitarianism relies on multiple definitions of happiness. Every person has different definition of happiness. Although we can find a common ground on the specific things, it is virtually impossible to see two people with the clone perspectives about the world today. Humans are complex beings. What makes one person happy can make another individual feel bored or out of touch with their life. That means we are faced two choices. We could either find common ground with our experience to compromise on a definition of happiness or only allow the description of the majority to exist. That is very true and factual. Okay, number 6, it creates the potential for the majority to rule through tyranny. Okay, this is a good one. Excuse me for a minute. I'm about to read this. Okay. It creates the potential for the majority of the rule through tyranny. People who self-identify as being evangelical in the United States do not support the idea of same-gender marriage at the level of 67%, although the younger evangelicals support the idea as a majority at 53%. Significantly, the population of older adults skews the overall percentages. Now, the image that the laws were being created based on the concept of utilitarianism in this population group. If you identify as an LGBTQIA, an individual in this society, you will be unable to get married. There will be nothing you can do about it either until enough people were swayed to come over to your position. Just because the majority of the population believes something is right does not make it an ethical choice. That thought process kept women from voting for centuries, permitted slavery to exist, allows for children trafficking and exploitation still today. Many more activities that harm others in some way. That is why happiness cannot be permitted to be the foundation of societal pursuits. Sometimes the correct choice is not the popular. Sometimes the correct choice is not the popular choice. That's right. That is number 6 of utilitarianism. That's one of the cons of it. The pros and cons of utilitarianism shows us that there is a time and place where these principles are offer potential benefit to society. The issue here is that the advantages cannot balance out the likelihood of harm that would exist at the end of the day. It does not make into account how many people in a minority position factor into that society. Exactly right. Just like the people at the top. They are either forced to pretend to be happy or allow themselves to be exploited for the greater good. Exactly. And this is by the author. Brandon Miller has a BA from the University of Texas of Austin. He is a seasoned writer who has written over 100 articles, which has been read by over 500,000 people. If have any comments, concerns about this blog, post this, please contact Green Garage. That's where I get this information from. Fair use for it about utilitarianism. And I've seen this mentioned in the Black Pill conversation by Mr. BGS himself. And people go by denialistic behavior. Utilitarianism is very important. It's an extreme side. I got it written down as well about the total and average. Now, the total is a method of applying it. It all applies what I just said in the video. And it gives a group thing. It's a group thing. The best sets of the outcomes would be, and there's just a problem with mere addition of the paradox with a consistent method of total utilitarianism. That's the total. Now, here's the rule. There's three sets of it. You got total utilitarianism and rule utilitarianism and average utilitarianism. Is a form of utilitarianism that says an action is right as it conforms to a rule that leads to the greatest good, or that of the righteousness of wrongness of particular action is a function of the rule of which is an instance. Yep, that's the rule. And the average, of course, views by the maximization of the average utility among a group members. And it says 100 people to 100 heathens. That means happiness points is judged as preferably to a group to 1,000 people to 99 to heathens. Yeah, it factors in what I said. I got it written down. It is to construct, yes, but it has a lot of disadvantages. 6 of them. Add 6 plus 7. That, add 6 plus, yeah, you add 6 plus 7 cons on this. Okay. You got 13. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I'm going to that. Peace, people, and shalom.